Okay, folks. Yeah. Okay, before we get started with this month's soiree, Tom kindly brought in cards for both Donna and Ron Lovis. Ron, who many of you remember, has departed us for the allegedly sunnier pastures of South Carolina, where it's cold and it snowed a lot more than it did up here, so yay, Ron. And Donna is still up in the English. She is still up in the Philadelphia area, or back up in the Philadelphia area. But so, come on up, do the Christmas greeting thing. Okay. Unfortunately, Joe is not here because he had some of the best news of all. Kitty Hawk announcements. Kitty Hawk, the 1 to 32nd F5E, is going to be a March arrival. So if you like 1 to 32nd F5Es, and I'm sorry, who doesn't like 1 to 32nd? Who doesn't like F5s? I mean, you're basically, if you don't like F5s, you're a communist. Let's face it. But in all seriousness, that's the first new F5 in the scale since the Hasegawa kit in the late 70s, early 80s. And this promises to be nice, and there's an awful lot you can do with the F5E. The other thing that Glenn wants to do with the kit is there's going to be a two-seater, and there is going to be an RF5E with the reconnaissance nose, which if you the Saudis had a really cool all-gloss black scheme for that, kind of Black Widow-esque, except it was high polish instead of South Pacific grungy. Okay. Other immediate announcements that you may have seen. Great Wall Hobby. The people who brought you the $100 plus 1 to 48th model, which was quickly copied by Tamiya for the F14 and really improved on by Tamiya, I guess. But so their next announced kit is an Su-35 flanker, the super flanker like they're flying in Syria. The cab looks good. The only difference, if you already have the Kitty Hawk, the biggest difference is it has the electronic warfare pods for the wingtips, which, oh, by the way, are asymmetric. They're different left and right, so if you're going to scratch build them yourself, pay attention. But that looks to be coming. That should be coming in. Great Wall says January. Experience with Great Wall tells me that means probably March. Okay, if you're a 1 to 32nd or 1 to 48th jet modeler, Gary Heatherly's GT Resin Company produces some good resin stuff, especially for 1 to 32nd modern and Vietnam-era U.S. jets, and now going into 148th. Gary pretty much, he used to be an all eBay entrepreneur. Got screwed by eBay, basically, and after that, he is now going to work through Gordon at Sprue Brothers, so you'll be able to get GT resins out of Sprue. Good for us, bad for eBay. Then, let's see. In terms of news, surprisingly, given that we have Nuremberg coming up in end of January, beginning of February, we haven't started seeing the news yet. You'll probably start seeing a lot of announcements after the new year, right after the new year, as companies try to get ahead of Nuremberg. We already know what the Edward January, the quote, big release from Edward is, and the big release from Edward is a 1 to 48 BF-109 G14. I said, whoop. Then I saw they were headlining with a brand new Hartmann airplane, and I said, whoop, I'm going to have a billion of them. So I got that going for me. Edward knows my wallet. Okay, other things have been announced. Hobby Boss, an A1B trainer. So if you want the big bubbly Sky Raider, they're doing one for you in 1 to 48. Okay. Hobby Boss is still coming up with the 72nd Skyhawks. Trumpeter with 72nd Intruders. Everybody's still making promises on that. Another new Hobby Boss release. I don't know why, because I think Airfix pretty much crushed this, but they're doing a 1 to 72nd C-40A and a C-48, which is the troop carrier version of the C-47. Again, don't know why, but hey, more power to them. Other brand new announcements, blah, blah, blah. Let's see. Italeri is reissuing its awesome F-117 in 1/48. The Lego F-117 was slightly more accurate than the Italeri, so give that one a pass. We already talked about the F5, Hawks, Stukas. The other thing, apparently, the 1/40, the 1/48 P-51 market is now owned by Airfix. Their new 1/48 P-51, assuming you can find one, is apparently gorgeous. And if it is not gorgeous enough for you, Edward has, no kidding, 11 or 12 different detail sets for your P-51 from Airfix. So, go hog wild, AMS modelers. Okay, for the creepy crawly guys. Oh. If anybody remembers the tiny little ASU-57 tank destroyer that the Soviet airborne units used, which is actually kind of cool. Hobby Boss is coming out with one of those in 1/35. No date for release yet. I don't even know what an FAV Delta Force is, but Hobby Boss is saying they're going to come out with one in 35th, and it says Delta Force, so you know it's probably cool. Bunch of trucks. Kinetic is coming out with their own M3A3 Bradley. The Tamiya, I thought they'd already released their EZ8 Sherman, but apparently they're going to give it another round in January. It's not a touchscreen, so stop doing that. David Smigelski isn't here because there's a bunch of armored train cars coming. And for Mike Snyder, there'll be a quiz on this later. Yeah, that's not... And Mike says, you're not as funny as you think you are. And Mike says, you think you're funny, but you're not. Yeah. Okay, not a lot again. Yeah. Again, not a lot of armored news. We'll pass on the Navy news because I know who's got that better than I do. That said, the Verifier kits, they had that 1/350th Iowa class battleship advertised. They've got the 1/700th Kentucky class, the 4-gun. Why we had to build one more class of 21-knot battleship, I don't know. But hey, we had the plans. But apparently these kits are phenomenal. So something to look forward to. On the sci-fi side, Horizon Models coming out with a bunch of a Redstone, and instead of a Mercury capsule on a Redstone, an actual intermediate range ballistic missile. So Redstone with a nuke. Jupiter C and Sparta WRE SAT, which I have no clue what that is. The other new announcement, for the Space 1999 fans, remember the Hawk combat craft from Space 1999? Well, new tool from, it's going to be in an NPC box, but it's a new tool coming from Mobius. 1/72. So it won't be ginormous like the 1/48 Eagle, but still cool. And we're still waiting, but you will have your choice of from Mobius 1/8 Gal Gadot or Linda Carter Wonder Woman figures for when Mike paints his next Wonder Woman. Okay, Gabe, ship news.
So the main things that are some of the latest releases, that Verifier 1/350th Missouri, we've seen some more of the CADs on her. She is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, the Tamiya 1/350th Missouri World War II kit was not a bad kit, especially for the age. But the Verifier kit, it comes with a fair amount of photo etch. It's just absolutely beautifully put together. Everything we've seen so far. The price point is also actually fairly reasonable. It looks like it's going to be retailing it for $200 for a 350th World War II battleship. Yeah, especially for a new tool with several sets of photo etch for it. It's like, okay, cool. Some of the other things we've seen is mainly some of the Trumper news, which I think you went over some of that last time. There were We're still waiting on the Baltimore to come out. They are looking at doing a CV1, the USS Langley, and then for AV3 conversion from the John Bahamas flight deck in 350 in scale. So still what's the Langley, but that's what we're going to finish with the Langley. Some of the main news we've seen so far, not a whole lot of anything else other than what's already been announced. The one other thing I did want to let you guys know about, though, Artbox, they've done a lot of wood decks. They're going out of business. So if you want any Artbox stuff, get it now. Artbox, they do a lot of wood decks. ARTBOX. So, just kind of an FYI for you guys on that one. Various Freetime Hobbies and Screw Brothers. Sometimes.
Yeah, Freetime Hobbies had a big talk. Yeah, let's see. And finally, next month from Edward, since Edward is so kind as to give us that. Okay. Well, I should say, coming this month from Edward. One thing I neglected to mention. For those who like the L29 Delphin, which is kind of a weird little Czech trainer, AMK had an absolutely beautiful kit of it. Hard to find now because AMK is kind of hard to come by. So, Edward is reboxing the AMK L29 with resin wheels, extra decals, photo etch, painting masks, and 5 marking options, including Egyptian, Slovakian, Reno, air races, and others. One other thing from Edward, if you like some of their box art, you can't. I don't know any retailers who are carrying this, but you can order prints of some of the Edward computer-generated box art off their site if you like any of it. Okay, come on. Okay, let's get this lit though. Okay, what's coming next month? Anybody got a Tamiya F4U1D? Well, Edward's doing a whole cockpit for it in 1 to 32nd. The Big Ed set's coming. Have you built your Wingnut Wings D7 yet, Tim? Well, I was going to say, Edward just came out with a Big Ed set for the D7. Like it needs more. For your Kitty Hawk Flanker E, the Big Ed set is out, which I highly recommend. It dresses up nicely. Also, for the 1 to 48, the UH-1D from Kitty Hawk, the one that Floyd Warner, who's about pretty much the most knowledgeable helicopter modeler in America, if not the planet, says is the best Huey in any scale. Get this kit, 48th. And he has extracted a promise from Glenn to do one in 35th. Other things that are coming, brass, yeah, no one cares. ECM pods in 32nd. Oh, people care. Nope, that's 48th. Never mind. Let's see. Yeah, we talked about the G14, which is coming with Hartmann decals. We've got the FW190A early model in 72nd coming back in JG54 Grundherzjäger decals as a double set. Those are usually a good value. 2 models and a bunch of stuff in the box. And for the World War I fans out there for 48th, the Wolseley Viper from Edward is coming back in a weekend edition next month, and the Spad 13 Profi Pack is coming back in 48th. Spads are cool. Okay, I'm trying to think what other news is there. Should be seeing, well, one other thing we can check before,
He used his buff out to help him pass his D set. No, he passed it. He got 3. He's good. He's really good with it.
and, oh look, all that stuff I just ordered from Ranan in Israel is now available from Sprue Brothers for less money. Or less postage. Well, it's more. Sometimes you should just wait. Okay, yeah, and in terms... Yeah, nothing really... Unless you need a 1 to 35th Bundeswehr tank crew, there's nothing really exciting from Sprue Brothers. Well, I don't know. Is anybody excited about either the 1 to 35th Tamiya Archer British self-propelled gun or the 1 to 32nd Rodan O2A Skymaster, or... Tom, stand up. Stand up. No, stand up. The 1 to 144th Rodan C141B Starlifter Polar 91.
Yeah, it's the same kit as before.
Of course it is.
Except it has the European one features for the EMC grade. Already checked it out.
Okay, sit down, Tom. We had to give him an excuse to get another cookie. Wait, Tom doesn't need an excuse to get another cookie. Okay, that's pretty much it for the news. Like I said, we're really waiting. News is going to explode. Tom, in the back.
C5M. It's going to be the same thing that I showed you, just with a different screw.
Fan?
Is that external?
By March.
But I'm saying, well, it'll have different fans, right?
Yeah, it's going to have a whole different engine.
Yeah.
So keep an eye out for that.
Okay. Anybody else have any news? Anybody have any Airfix news? I'm still waiting for my 1 to 72nd British Phantom. And don't even mention to Joe the 1 to 32nd British Phantom, promised but nothing seen from HK Models. He gets a little hostile.
The other wing on wheels kit that came out was Taube, the 1914.
The Etrich Taube?
It's called a Janine Stahl.
Yeah.
Stahl, it's a French variation of the singer. But the wings are translucent.
Yeah, you talked about the Airfix portraits of reviews. Yeah. About the 10%
Yeah, the British one. Yeah, that's unfortunately we've been talking about that for quite a while. Because we've been waiting for it for quite a while. And Airfix series ratings. But they're frustrating people in Britain. Someone has to come to the market and say,
Although I have
three choices though. First one, this clearly belongs to someone else. Leave it with them and find out.
No, wait, you're right.
Take it all for yourself, or donate this French earnings.
Okay, let's see. Radar.
Perhaps equal to the
other than,
Yeah.
other than, what, well, AFP clubs coming out with a 135th, come out with a 135th off. The reviews say there's like 6 pieces to the rock, to the 3 missiles. There's like 200 pieces to the launcher. So that'll be pretty good. That's about the only thing that I had that was new. I haven't heard when the SA5's coming out.
Which one? Yeah.
SA5.
I just checked Trumpeter's site. They had no announcements. The end of November announcement had nothing exciting. The end of October announcement said the MiG-29 UB was on short approach, and it has not turned up. Because if another 30-second Fulcrum turns up, we'll have, 2 days before it's in the States, Joe will have 3 of them and will tell us how good it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Give me 2, you guys know.
shall we,
Grab the CD individual.
let's see. We're waiting on pizza. The guy said he was going to bring the pizza here.
Shop at the shop.
So,
At number 9.
Kane,
Trash this one.
I'm assuming that giant Bandai Millennium Falcon is yours. How did you sneak that into your house past your wife?
That's called garage.
Ah,
It stayed in the garage until today.
well, let's go ahead and talk about the Millennium Falcon while we wait for pizza. What the hell is an aluminum Falcon?
That's why I'm quite excited about getting this kit from locally. Now this is I bought this kit locally from Hobby Works in Fairfax. Fantastic price. I think it's $370. Now this is a 43,000 yen kit, so this is like what you pay on the street of Japan. They also asking the same price here in the stateside. So close, you know, they're like, you always give you 5-10% discount on the ticket price. So you're actually getting what you pay in Japan. And look at the seat. This is decal. And it came with photo etch for the 6 little exhausts there. They actually give you a photo etch kit for it, so that's above and beyond. I think the 5 mode doesn't have that. 5 mode is plastic, so this is above and beyond. It comes with its light kit, so I think that's worth some money, I guess. Fine details and everything. There's a little box within a box for all the fine little pieces. Right here, as if this is not enough pieces. Allegedly, underneath all this is a mini box containing all the smaller, finer plastic that can snap because of the wobbling around. So the box in the box is protected fine wires and whatnot.
Amazing amount of pieces.
I don't know. This is probably over 1,000 pieces in this kit, easy.
Does it come with the lights?
Yes, it comes with the light kit. It has, I think, if it lit up the back side, and I think it has light at all 4 legs and the ram. And it has inner detail for the loading ram. So, but that's about it. Has no cockpit detail. Has some cockpit details, but it's nothing like this guy, which will have full internal. But then so is the price tag. So you pay for what you get, but for what you pay for, I think is a it is deserving perfect grade kit, and supposedly 100% snap fit. Not a single drop of glue you needed to do this whole thing. Snap fit. You always end up using glue here and there anyway to make it fit together, but why would you want not to paint this kit is beyond me. I mean, this kit is screaming to be weather painted, battle damage. It looks so beautiful. I couldn't wait to get my hand on it. I mean, look at the little details here. It is amazing kit. Giant piece of thing. Now, I saw the videos. This kit is actually bigger than the final kit. Like this much. It's actually bigger than the final kit. And I couldn't wait to get my hands on it. You guys are welcome to go and open the, look at the individuals, run sheets. It is a lot of work, I think, but it's going to be worth it to put it together. I'm done. I absolutely love it.
So what'd you tell your missus about this one?
I didn't tell her, just show up.
I had this on pre-order for months. Yeah, that's
No,
If we suddenly stop seeing you, we know what happened.
that should kill me. Actually, no, this is the second of the really giant kits. You may just get numb from it. I actually have a picture. I couldn't even bring it in so big, but I'll show you guys when you see it. You want to see it. This is actually not as big as a kit I got from China.
nice. Still cool.
Oh, this is amazing kit. I was actually looking at this first, and I looked at the price tag, and I downgraded to that.
So
They
this
have
is
more of
better
those?
detail
Huh?
than the
How do it work?
outside.
Do they have more of them?
There's, I think, at least one more when I left them. So for the price they charge, I mean, most internet charge the recommended $3.99, and they were like $3.70.
Yeah.
So they're solid $20, $30 below the MSRP. So I mean, consider this is a 43,000 yen kit. If you actually do the convention, plus the shipping and whatnot, it would have been a $550, $600 kit, easy. But now you're only paying not even $400 for the thing. So I think it's a steal of a deal. If you, I mean, people who buy kit directly from Japan, that's what you have. I mean, compared to Dragon, I mean, the street price of Dragon is like half over in Asia than what we paid here. This would have been a $600 kit, but $392 with tax.
I gotta build enough models to make room for it before I buy that.
I have no clue, but now somebody also told me this is supposed to be a limited production. That means they will stop pressing it very soon. I think they're gonna like press it once every 2-3 years because the perfect grade kids do that all the time.
Just wait until the Death Star comes.
They will press it now and then they'll stop. A lot of the really big kids they only go to production once a year or something like that. So. Just for your information, Bandai actually released 2 perfect grade this year, which is one for Star Wars, one for the flatline, the flagship series, which is Gundam something. So they actually released 2 perfect grade in 1 year, which is like a lot. I mean, that one is about the same size as this guy. And comparable price lines of $300. So I have to pick between this one and the other guy. I pick this guy instead. It's a dream come true, kid. What do you expect?
Nice. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you. Oh. Hopefully I can start working on 2019.
Heads up, an F-15. We've only seen Santa's new toy delivery system 8 million times. True. It feels like.
So, okay, to sign the cards.
I do.
Yeah, me too.
So, let's talk, for those who love their Doctor Who, K9.
So I was digging through some stuff the other day.
Anybody have a pen? Excuse me, sorry.
No, you're not.
Pencil. Pen?
Shoot him, canine.
I thought that was an airbrush.
Yeah. It's canine. Yep.
It's not Boxy's dog from Galactica.
Nah. That was about around the same.
Probably, yeah.
76 and 79, I think it was or 78 for. Okay. Doctor Who did it first.
Well, and then he showed up again in the new Doctor.
Yep. He'd been around the block.
Like David Tennant.
Yep.
So is that like a handmade kit or something?
This was built by me about 20 years ago in scratch, using foam board and aluminum tape. This was the Mark 55. I built that many canines. I started when he was his age.
Nice.
Built 2 or 3 a year, starting off small. Now this here is a 1-to-1 scale of the blueprints that were in a 1981 magazine, Starlog. They actually had blueprints in there, which were relatively accurate except for the head. The way they drew it, it was very hard angles. But when you look at the series, the head has actually got a lot of curves in it, and the edges are rounded. I found these blueprints recently, as well as mine, from 20 years ago, and I'm aiming to, next year, start building not just 1, but 2 new canines, one for myself and one for a friend of my mom's, in 1-to-1 scale, using these blueprints.
Nice.
20 years ago?
Yep.
We like 40 years ago.
No, for me it was 20 years ago. I'm not that old.
40 years ago, he was still a baby in his father's eye.
Yeah. And then here's a little progress on my Millennium Falcon.
Nice.
We're getting there. And then some corridor work.
So is the interior part like the hardest, or?
You know, I've been doing. These things are really easy, at least for me, because I've been doing, because they send 8 issues at a time, because that's what I'm paying for. I've been, I did the latest edition in 3 hours before coming here tonight. I mean, it's not that hard. So.
Your boss think while you're doing that while you're.
Huh?
Just bring it into your office.
Yeah. my desk. So what'll take the time is when I get to the point near completion, when I go and start doing more weathering and detail, because that's what because while they do weather it, it's more weather than this. Yeah. Which one? See, that's something they put on there. So that's on the original, on the model, on the studio model for episode 5. So you just, yeah. You see it on. They did the same.
It's from that crash.
See, they did the same, similar on here.
It's got suction cup mouth sticks to the windshield.
Yeah.
It's like the Bismarck oil stain.
Yeah. So the idea is you can build this as it is without having to do any painting or any weathering. But of course, I'm going to do some more weathering and more, make it more beat up. But I'm going to wait until I get near completion, because then you can make all the parts, the same. Because when you look at this, you can see that the panels are slightly different in their weathering. Like there's hardly any here, but there's more here, because someone else was doing that one. So, huh? Yeah, but I want it to look beat up and used, but more even, if that makes sense. Yeah, because see, this was done by one person, this was done by someone else. This person was more heavier on their weathering than on this panel, and of course there's none on here. So, of course, I think this is the. I think this is the rear. Huh?
Maybe he washed it, and the Wookiee got out there.
Yeah.
The Dagobah caramel.
And then, at the same time I found K9's head, I found this that I did about 20 years ago.
It still works.
And it still works.
The batteries are still going.
Yeah, no, new battery, but
What's that one?
this is the Jupiter 2 from Lost in Space. I don't remember which kit this was. There's nothing on the inside to say what it was. So I don't.
That's the Lost in Space one.
Yeah. My own wiring. I used to be a lot more industrious back in the day. So this was a this sliding thing was something I found on allelectronics.com, which I don't even think is around anymore. And then, wired in all these wires and made my own, LED array down here. This took a while. And because I used so much wire, I didn't put the inside in because there's no real room for it. And for me, at the time, it just hung from the ceiling. I didn't care. But as for K9, had motors for ears. There was a motor to make the head go up and down, the antenna to come out. There was, this probably still works, this is a wireless camera on the front, so I could see where he's going. And he had speakers with an amplifier on the inside. I used to have things set up, you could push a little button and he would say things from the show. In his final form, he had it's not in here now. I still have it though, thank goodness. There was a big circuit board that went in here that was a infrared remote control system. And I had a remote control, I could sit there and push and it would do whatever I told it to do. There was even a computer in the side where the screen is. There was actually a computer there with a screen that would show things on the screen. And I could type on it, make it talk and all that sort of stuff. I started running out of space, so I disassembled the body and just kept the head because I wasn't really into that anymore. But the new one I'm going to build will probably be out of wood. Since the edges are rounded, it'll be easier to sand that to make it look right. And make it a little bit more durable because, as you can see, this is kind of beat up. So that's my stuff for this month.
And now, every December.
make some reappearance. Santa baby coming down the chimney tonight.
Well, I think you've all seen it before, but it is back, you know, because we're approaching December the 24th. So this is Santa's F-15 from the North Pole Air Force, and what happened was as his sleigh was becoming archaic, so he needed a new toy delivery system, or TDS, and so he actually was going to have something custom made. But, you know, cost overruns, departmental infighting, inter-service rivalry, it just ended up being too expensive. So he decided that what he had to do was buy something off the shelf. So he went to, and this is the good old days for Santa, you know, he actually went to McDonnell Douglas, and now he'd have to go to Boeing, you know, and of course now he's got to pay, now that this is Boeing, he's got to pay a licensing fee for it, which he's not very happy about. But, you know, what are you going to do? He doesn't want trouble.
And he'd get an F-35.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, because his F-15, at least it flies and does what it's supposed to do, you know. So he went with some...
Between Airbus and Boeing?
Yeah. So he, you know, he went with something off the shelf, and he got his F-15, and he's got his little... Wizzo is Hervey, you know, because he got tired of doing dentistry, so he decided that, you know, got tired of pulling teeth. The only problem is that, you know, the ejection seat is so low that he has to sit on a stack of phone books. Otherwise, his head wasn't coming up above the canopy rail. So it's actually what happened with this, as I'm sure you've all heard. My wife at one point said to me in a hobby shop, what type of jet would Santa fly if he was going to fly a jet? So I said he's got to fly an F-15 Strike Eagle. And she said, well, will you make me Santa Claus's F-15? And at the time I was, well, I have to also say, she does these incredible Christmas ornaments that are covered in all sorts of jewels and diamonds and, you know, lace and all sorts of stuff. And her original plan was, well, you build me the model and then I'm going to stick, you know, jewels and stuff all over it. And I was kind of like, fine, you know, because if you want a happy life, you have a happy wife. You know, and I'm like, yeah, whatever, you know. But then I started building it and getting into it, and I started thinking about, you know, the Germans in particular will take their jets and do these incredible air show display planes, you know. So I thought, well, what would it look like if it was really Santa Claus's real F-15? So I made it as close to reality as I could. It's basically, the scheme is an aggressor scheme, except that it's red, gold, and green. You know, and a lot of Air Forces have roundels for their insignia, so, you know, this is the North Pole Air Force. And the only thing it's got all the stenciling on it, all the no-step stuff. So there's really no reason why somebody with an F-15 couldn't paint it this way, other than the fact that instead of missiles, he's got candy canes, and instead of bombs, he's got presents. I'm sorry, what's that? Bombs kind of are. Yeah, there you go, in a way.
It's like really aggressive.
Yeah. Well, in actual fact, he actually did modify the sensors on it so that these are actually fire and forget presents, and they're laser guided by his target sensors here. So they really truly are the first, as I said. Well, they're not fire and forget; they're actually deliver and forget. You know. So, and they modified the Vulcan cannon to fire jelly beans, you know. But, you know, they had to actually slow down the velocity because, you know, when they were at like 3,000 feet per second, that was a little aggressive, you know, and it was kind of doing too much damage to the house they were firing it into. And, you know, there were a couple of kids who kind of got, you know, hit in the head. You know, that wasn't good. But, so, and then the other thing is of course, bombers in the Second World War, as we all know, had nose art. So Santa's got his little nose art here. This is actually Mrs. Claus, who's, you know, much more of a hottie than most people think, who's saying, hurry down the chimney tonight. And that actually started out, it was actually really bomber nose art from a B-25 that my wife took, and she blew it up so that it was fairly big, and then she turned the woman on there into Mrs. Claus, put her little red, red and white furred outfit on her. And then, of course, just in homage to the old sleigh, there's the old sleigh as well. And Santa Claus was actually reading about the technique where you can put if you put the silhouette of the cockpit canopy on the bottom, then it might confuse your enemy as to, what your aspect is. Now, personally, I think if you let your enemy get close enough to see that silhouette, you're screwed at any rate. I mean, But so Santa liked that, so he put a little Christmas tree on the bottom just to confuse people as to, whether this was really a plane or whether it was a tree. Now, the fact that it's at 30,000 feet, I don't see how people would be confused, but,
Does he have to file with NORAD?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Does he have to file with NORAD when he comes across Canada?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And of course, people questioned whether Santa Claus was really, certified to fly a plane like this, but what they don't realize is he actually has, pilot certificate 1. So, he can fly whatever he wants. He's the original pilot.
So when are you going to build all his tanker support?
Well, and unfortunately, I didn't get it finished, but Santa actually realized that even though it's magical, he didn't have enough internal fuel in his F-15 to get around the world. So he actually went out and bought a surplus KC-135. And it's been languishing for 5 or 6 years, almost finished. It's painted to look like a candy cane.
It's out of date, Tom.
I'm sorry, what's that?
It's out of date.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, and then the nose art for that is actually another B-25 modified nose art. It's a woman bending over with a short skirt on who's got a basket full of bombs, except it's going to get modified into being an elf in a little short green shirt with a basket full of presents, and she's going to be Santa's little helper. And then, as a friend of mine pointed out, well, how does Santa Claus tell who's naughty and who's nice? Well, Santa Claus, going into the electronic age, was wondering the same thing, so he bought himself a surplus AWACS. And that's how he tells who's naughty and who's nice. And that, if I can figure out how to do it, is going to, well, the radar dome is going to get painted to look like a chocolate chip cookie. And then I've just got to figure out a good way of making the fuselage look like a glass of milk.
I do?
And then, exactly. Well, on that one, it's going to have the little female elf going, but naughty is nice. Anyway, that's Santa's F-15. Oh, that's right. Sorry. I forgot. Right. Santa, of course, has his adversary, which is the Grinch in his lime green MiG 29B with what was the dog's name? Max. Max is his wizard.
Okay. It's a biplane, it's got figures, and it's weird. It's got to be challenging.
Weird. What's really weird is that I was able to make it. So the prop act. I mean, I haven't done that in years. So, but this is the Wingnut Wings Albatross B2, which was a German aircraft that was used in 1914 and 15 for observation, bombing, and then it ended up getting relegated to training duties because it was basically increasingly obsolete. The RFC would keep the obsolete aircraft and keep using them. And this shares actually some of the same problems all the early aircraft did. There's the observers in front of the pilot. And everybody's like, these airframes are great, but we got to give the gunner a better gun. And so they'd stick a Lewis gun or something in the front seat and go, this isn't going to work because you're going to end up shooting your wings off or maybe the pilot's head. So this one actually has no armament. There's just a Luger with a stock and a barrel drum on it. So this is old school. But the Russians did use a lot of captured stuff. They used this one. I found some photographs and kind of based this on that. If you look closely, you can see
normally this would have like a big white square with the cross, and so I have like slightly discolored where they painted it over and put the roundels, and then they just painted out the crosses on the fuselage, which is all wood grain. And those were decals. The decals that came with the kit were, you had to work with them and use a lot of Solid-Set, but they really come out nice after they settle down. And then, of course, like you said, I went into my megalomaniac mode, and I'm like, I should have a pilot or something for this. And I ended up getting two, since there's two of them. One is the guy with the helmet came from Copper State Models. The grouchy-looking guy with the hat is from Kellerkind Miniaturen, which is a German online. They have a lot of nice stuff. And then these two guys are Combrig, which is a Russian company, and actually Free Time had those. I don't know why, because they're not ship. Well, they're not ship related. That's what I'm used to seeing from them. But no, that's standard. That's actually standard aircrew, black leather flying gear. And the two officers, one's a cavalry officer. The smarter one is an infantry officer, and it's amusing to me. These aircraft were flammable. I mean, they're made of doped linen, or doped fabric rather, and the pilot sits on the gas tank. And yet I find all these pictures of guys with cigarettes, standing right in front of them. So I said, well, these guys are having a smoke before they fly. So you've got the two staff officers briefing the air crew. It's like, go look for stuff, which in the early days was pretty much how it happened. There's a great account from a Russian aviator who said a staff officer came up, laid out a map, he put the base of a compass on their airfield, and then just went, he said, okay, go search that. And the pilot's like, really? So they had not really learned how to do these things systematically, but they got better at it. So this is around 1915. You can see where I patched holes from when the aircraft was shot down and forced to land. But I don't know. I'm amused that there's a big ed set for anything wingnut wings. The kits themselves are great. You can add to them. There's a company called HGW that I've been buying some stuff because they have a lot of the neat engine detail like spark plugs and wires, and I'm like, well, why make them myself? But when they say, here's replacement photo etch for the instruments, and I'm like, but the instrument panel and decals are great. Why do I need to do that? So I don't know. There's some of us out there who just see photo etch, I gotta buy it. I don't do. I would never do that. At least I haven't done it.
HK models B17.
Yeah, I know. It's in a box.
No, I meant the one you built.
That one, oh boy, yeah.
That's got an additional pound of photo etch.
That has about a pound of photo etch and a chunk of my finger in it. But like I said, there's some nice to have photo etch you can put on these. It's not really necessary. The mat I actually got, I keep forgetting the name of the company, but I actually found these on Amazon. I think it's a Polish company, but you can buy like, summer meadows, spring valley, autumn grass, and as you can see, you just cut them to shape your board and you're done. And then if people assume I did all that myself, I just let them. But so that's it. I've got as usual, tons of other stuff in the works, and I ordered 2 of the Dolphins, by the way. So.
I hate to be picky, but that's Kentucky Blue Brand. That plane never would have been on that.
Yeah, but only you know that.
Now we all. He and the IPMS judge, I'm going to tell you.
Okay. Let's see.
Good job.
Thank you.
Jupiter.
Weirdo T6.
Jupiter 2. Jupiter 3? Okay, we did the Jupiter. Oh, that means we got a whole mess load of T6s.
With weird national markings.
With awesome national markings that I don't know, so they're awesome.
Cuba, Mexico, Laos, and some other guy.
FAR, I don't know.
That's Cuban.
I'm rehashing old stuff because I got nothing. So I built one T6 and I got a decal sheet for it, and I said you just can't build one T6 with a whole expensive decal sheet. So I got all these third world air forces. So you're looking at
yellow one is Cuba. The blue one is converted to an SNJ, and it's Uruguay. The green one is Mexico, and the gray one is CIA Laos. Yeah. So it's Academy T6. Nothing spectacular or bad about the kit, and you just can't build one. Any complaints?
No. No, my hat's off for arcane nationalities.
Beaumarks. Lots of Beaumarks.
The first thing, there's a couple things here. The first, just something here. This is the new Beaumark kit. If you find the Beaumark kit, it doesn't have this, and it doesn't have this little funky thing in the corner, it's worth about $300 to you. This is the re-release, which I'll talk about here in a second. But what I've got is a Beaumark A. This kit is from 1957. This kit is worth, if you can find it, about $350 to $380 in there. It's actually kind of the prototype version. I built it out of the box. It's traveled all over the world with me. It shows the wear and tear of being around for a whole long time. You know, it's got a lot of errors in it, but essentially, you know, I was telling people earlier, you know, I kind of poo-poo a lot of Russian stuff, you know, Russian SAMs, and it's like, yeah, I respect them, but I don't get really excited about them because we've thrown away stuff better than some of the Russian stuff. For example, the Beaumark A had approximately 250-mile range. Right now, there's none of the SAMs out there that can cover 250 miles. The Beaumark B, which is this new kit that it's the re-release that I redid, had new engines. The difference between them is the Beaumark A had a liquid-fueled rocket motor to lift it off the pad, followed by 2 ramjets. The B version pulled out the liquid-fueled, replaced it with a solid-fuel booster, put more gas in it, and the range was nearly 500 miles. And if you understand how the system worked, it was basically Aegis in the 1950s. There were only a few dozen sites along the northern tier and on the corners of the country. What they would do is they would launch one of these things out. It would be picked up by a forward control site, guided to a point in space out in front of the Russian bombers. They would do a quick burst of energy, transfer, and it would transfer into an automatic tracking mode, and it would self-guide to the intercept. To give you an idea of the size of this thing, this is 1/56 scale. An SA2 guideline comes up to about the full length of the missile with the booster comes up to about the radome on this. It's about it's about 33 feet, I think it is, for the or 35 feet for the SA2. This is 46 feet long in there. Basically, it was in service from about 1960 to 1974. Most of them ended up being used as high-speed targets at Eglin. So most of the pictures you see of them being launched, that's what you see. Pardon?
Do they paint those the Eglin? Do they paint the Eglin?
I've seen all kinds of pictures, all kinds of colors. A lot of them got painted orange, you know, at least on the wingtips on there. Essentially 26 missiles to a battery. They were in a barn. The roof opened up, the thing would stand up, and it would launch. And this is the old monogram. They used to have a whole missile kit, and I was going through some stuff, and I happened to find that I had one of these. So I cleaned it up and repainted it in honor of our Canadian representatives here.
So that's the Canadian version. It's a Beaumark, eh?
The Beaumark, eh? And I just got this today. This is the 172, which is actually more accurate. Belcher's. There's the missile here and the launcher, which I was looking at because this launcher is completely wrong for just about everything. So what I'm going to probably do is take the launcher kit that I have not built for this, and see what I can modify and see if I can make a proper launcher for the kit. So at any rate, I have another one of these to build, and if I'm successful with this, I may build it as the Canadian version. And the difference between the two, if you come up and look, you can see a very pronounced bell on the ramjet engines, whereas the B model, it's a straighter. So I basically cut the back end of the motors off, and put a plastic tubing on, and sanded it to paint and scored it for shape. To give you an idea, this engine core, the ramjet engine core, is a D12 SR-71 drone. Gives you an idea of technology that was with that. Now, then I just brought this. This is a recent acquisition. I'm waiting for the metal tracks to come in. This is the SA-13 Gopher, another one of the systems I played with when I was in Germany. So I haven't started any of this, but you can see it's a fairly decent sized vehicle. And actually, they don't make metal tracks for it, but they do make metal tracks for the artillery version, the 152 artillery tank, which happens to be the same. So that's what I got. So.
Is that a short range?
That's what, the 2S1 or 2S3?
I think the 2S3 is what it is.
That's a short range system?
Gazvika?
Yeah,
Gazvika?
it means like chrysanthemum or something like that.
So at any rate, that's thing there. So any questions?
That's a short range system, isn't it?
This?
No, the 13.
This one's only about 7 or 8 miles. It's basically like a glorified Stinger, a little bit longer range than a Stinger, but not as much as like a Chaparral. Chaparral could, or SA8 could reach out about 10 miles. This thing's more reasonably about 6 to maybe 7 if you're really stupid.
How fast did those Beaumarks go?
Beaumark was Mach 3 plus.
A lot faster than a bear.
And basically, they lofted this thing up. It would go up over 100,000 feet. They'd run it down range at high altitude and then drop it in on top of you. And actually, if you go to YouTube, they actually have some versions where they did not have the warhead. There's a 2,000-pound warhead in there, which is pretty awesome. But they had some versions without the, and then what they did is on the wings of the bomber targets, they had cameras, and you can see the missile the missile would just pass right in front of the bomber, so the blast would be here, and the bomber would just basically fly right into it.
Well, of course, you want to make sure you kill the crew.
Pardon?
You want to make sure you kill the
Yeah, you're basically killing the crew, but there's some pretty awesome, and there are some ones that actually had a live warhead, and the last thing you see is the flash. You see the missile coming in, and then you just see the flash, and it's all over.
You stick a nuke on it?
It would carry a nuke warhead. So for large formations, each battery had a number of nuke warhead prepped missiles. In fact, there's a very infamous incident up at Dover Air Force Base. There was a pad. They had an A version that caught fire. The fuels were pretty toxic, and it basically burst the warhead. The shelter is still there, covered in concrete. Yeah. But yeah. But at any rate, like I said, we threw it away, and right now there's nothing out there with anything with even a 200-mile range, Samwise out there.
Awesome.
Okay. Big Japanese boat. That must be Gabe.
Another merchant vessel.
Yeah. So I mainly brought this in because I haven't started any work on it, but this is the 1/350th Junyo kit that was released fairly recently by Hasegawa. They also did the Hio. The Junyo's molded in her 44 fit. The Hio's molded in 42 fit, but it's really not hard to convert one to the other because they're almost identical. It's just a couple minor things on them. Typical of Hasegawa with their boxing, they've got full at-scale painting guide for it on one side, but flip it over and they have the full rigging chart for you. So they've been doing this a lot recently. The kit itself, MSRP, is $330. This is right about not dissimilar pricing to their Akagi kit that they released a couple years ago, except the detail on this is substantially better than the Akagi, which is impressive to say the least. One of the things that I was noticing on it when I first got it, and I just let you take a look at it, but little things like on the hull you have things like the degaussing cable, which is not uncommon to see, but they've got outboard rigging wires that are molded onto the hull, and it's just like, you never see that. So those types of things. Free Time Hobbies had a sale on this thing. I literally saw the sale and I was like whining about it to my wife because it was like, oh, it's $150, man, I want the kit. Next thing you know, about a week later, she comes up and hands me $150 and says, get the kit. It's like, yay! So, yeah, it's kind of hard to complain with that kind of a price drop, right? So
you were just gonna go with, oh, I pre-ordered this.
No, I wanted to get it anyway, but yeah, that's everything's in here if you guys want to take a look. My only complaint about this in particular set is there is no photo etch in it. So, which is, Hasegawa usually includes at least something, like rails or whatnot, the last several kits, not this one. So, but yeah, feel free to take a look. That's all I got.
It looks really cool. I like that. It's like, can you get the photo etch?
Yeah, Hasegawa does sell the photo etch separate. So.
Yeah, you do cards. I don't have the card because they're Hasegawa and that's what they do.
Yep.
Before you play a card, that would scour your juice because you're about to get on.
I guess I'll just grab my kid and run.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. They didn't. They don't have any vendors.
They do their frame all of this painting when you're done.